Autumn had settled across the land like a gentle shroud. In the quiet village of Morvain Hollow, nestled deep in a forgotten valley where mists clung to the treetops like memories, the townsfolk spoke in hushed tones. The lanterns outside every doorway flickered not just with candlelight, but with caution. It was All Hallows Eve. In a modest cottage at the edge of the woods, a girl named Eleonora drifted beneath the covers of her grandmother's old quilt. Her breath rose and fell slowly, in rhythm with the rustling wind outside. Beside her bed stood a gnarled lantern carved from a turnip, its crude face leering with a mischievous grin. Her father, Alder, had carved it earlier that day, muttering old rhymes passed down through generations. "Sleep, and dream deep," he had whispered, placing the lantern carefully on the wooden stool by her bed. "The light keeps the wanderers away." But Eleonora was not afraid. She was curious. Unlike most in Morvain Hollow, she loved the stories, especially the ones her grandmother had told before the fever took her voice. Stories of strange lights in the marsh, of creatures who whispered riddles, and of the cursed soul who once tricked the devil himself. His name was not Jack in these tales. Not here. Here, he was known as Thorn of the Ember Path. Long ago, before the village had a name, before the lanterns were carved, there was a man with a silver tongue and blackened soul. Thorn was a wanderer, a trickster, and above all, a man who feared only one thing, the darkness beyond death. It is said that Thorn had made a deal with a spirit known only as the Ember Watcher, a being older than death, who roamed the wilds in search of the lost. In exchange for safe passage through the shadows, Thorn offered his voice, the very gift that had swindled kings and spirits alike. But Thorn had no intention of keeping his promise. The night was thick with memory, and Eleonora's dream slowly took shape. In it, she walked a winding forest path. The moon above her was veiled by mist, and the trees groaned like tired bones. In her hand, she carried a small lantern, the same one from her bedside, but glowing with a cold, blue flame. Up ahead, a figure waited by the crossroads. Cloaked in shadow, with eyes like glowing coals, the figure leaned on a crooked staff carved with ancient runes. "You seek the truth," the figure said, his voice distant but clear. "But the truth seeks a price. Who are you?" Eleonora asked, her voice trembling. "I am the reason your father fears the dark," he replied. "I am Thorn's legacy. And perhaps, yours too." The ground beneath her shifted, and suddenly she stood not in the forest, but at the edge of a vast marshland. Will-o'-the-wisps danced over the black water, and ancient stones jutted like teeth from the soil. "You must choose," the voice echoed. "To carry the ember, or to be consumed by it." Eleonora's lantern flared brighter, and with it came a memory, not her own. Thorn, standing atop a cliff, holding a dying flame in his hands as monstrous shapes crawled toward him from the abyss below. "They cannot pass the flame," he shouted into the void. "So I shall carry it forever." But eternity was long, and Thorn had grown weary. In a final act of defiance, he had scattered his soul into 12 embers, each hidden across the world, bound by stories, buried in dreams. Only one with his bloodline could rekindle them all, or extinguish them for good. Eleonora awoke with a start. The room was cold, though the fire in the hearth still burned. Her lantern had gone out, and carved into the frost of her window pane were 4 words she hadn't seen before. The path has opened. She hurried to her father's room, only to find his bed empty and his boots gone. On the nightstand, a folded parchment sat, sealed with red wax shaped like a flame. Her name was written on it in elegant, looping ink. Eleonora, my daughter, if you're reading this, I've gone to retrieve something I should never have lost. Whatever happens, do not follow. Let the embers fade. But Eleonora knew she could not obey. The stories were more than fairy tales. The ember had chosen her now. And so, she packed her satchel with the old compass, her grandmother's necklace, and the cold, grinning lantern. The stars above seemed to shimmer with hidden words. The wind whispered warnings she did not heed. For in Morvain Hollow, once you light the ember, the journey begins and it always ends where it began. But this time, perhaps, the story would end differently. The road beyond Morvain Hollow was one no villager dared to walk once the last leaf of autumn fell. But Eleonora's boots crushed the frost with resolve. Her cloak flared in the morning mist like a tattered banner of old, and her lantern now cold and silent swung at her side, awaiting its flame. She followed the trail eastward, guided by the strange compulsion in her chest. The air was growing thinner with every step, filled with the scent of ash and burnt moss. Though the sun had risen, the sky remained dim, cloaked in a veil of silver clouds. It was not long before the trees grew crooked, their bark blackened as if scorched by a fire long since died. At the center of this withered forest lay a ring of standing stones ancient, cracked, and humming softly beneath the ground. Eleonora approached the largest stone, where a crow perched atop it. But this was no ordinary crow. Its eyes glowed white, and its feathers shimmered like molten ink. "You carry the ember," it croaked. "And so the trials begin." "I seek my father," she said. "And the truth." "You seek him, then." "The one they call Thorn." Eleonora nodded. The crow flapped its wings and circled overhead. "Then you must step into the hollow flame. Only then shall you see what he became." Without waiting for understanding, the ground before her split open. From the cracked earth rose a stair of glowing stone, descending into darkness. Each step pulsed faintly, lighting the cavern below in hues of ember light. Eleonora gripped her lantern, which, to her surprise, flickered back to life as she stepped down. As she descended, she heard whispers, voices not her own. "She bears the blood, she walks the path, the spark returns." The stair ended in a circular chamber, walls covered in carvings. A flame burned at the center, suspended in midair, unmoving and silent. Surrounding it were 12 thrones, each empty, except one. A figure sat upon it, barely visible through the flickering light. His skin was pale like candle wax, and his eyes were pits of embers. Eleonora, the figure rasped, as though tasting her name. Daughter of fire blood, child of my unmaking. She stepped forward, trembling. Are you Thorn? He nodded slowly. But you're not real. You're a shade. I am a memory. 1/12 of what remains. He gestured toward the flame. This is the first ember. The root of it all. The part of me that remembers guilt. Guilt. Thorn smiled bitterly. You've heard the tale, the clever trickster who fooled the devil twice. But stories forget what it cost. He stood, bones creaking. I never meant to damn myself forever. I wanted power, yes, but not torment. So I split myself 12 embers, each hidden in a realm between light and shadow. He looked at her with strange sorrow. You must not gather them, Eleonora. Let the past die. Let me die. But Eleonora shook her head. You made my father vanish. You cursed us with this blood. If I must walk the ember path to end this story, then I will. At her words, the first ember flared. Thorn's shade recoiled, fading into smoke. So be it. Then know this, the moment you awaken a flame, you awaken its guardian. A low growl echoed through the chamber. From the shadows beyond the flame, a shape emerged, a hound wreathed in smoke and fire, its eyes dripping molten light. It snarled, circling her, breath steaming in the air. Eleonora backed toward the flame, lantern raised. Face it, Thorn's fading voice whispered. Only by confronting the guardian can you earn the ember's truth. The hound lunged. Eleonora rolled aside, her lantern bursting into flame with a loud hoomph. The light stunned the beast, and for a heartbeat, she saw something inside its chest, a burning chain, coiled like a serpent. I don't want to fight you, she said softly. But I must know. The lantern's flame intensified. She held it up and stepped forward. Release, she whispered. The hound trembled, growled once more, then bowed its head. Its body began to dissolve into sparks, revealing a single ember floating in midair. Eleonora reached out, and as her fingers touched it, visions flooded her mind. A cliff under stormy skies. A man kneeling in ash. A child's cry. A door closed. A curse spoken by a forgotten god. When she opened her eyes, the first ember was in her hand, pulsing gently with warmth. The chamber had gone still. The thrones were gone. Only the stairs remained. Eleonora climbed back to the surface, the lantern now alive with steady flame. The crow waited atop the stone, watching. You carry the first, it said. But 11 remain. "And so does my father," she replied. "I'll bring them all together. And I'll end this." The crow cawed once, then took flight, vanishing into the gray sky. Eleanor turned toward the horizon. The journey had only just begun. The skies over Morvain Hollow had faded behind her. The path now wound through a barren stretch of land known in old maps as Glendra's Vale, a sunless, mist-choked valley said to be cursed with silence. No birds sang. No wind stirred. Only Eleanor's breath and the soft hiss of her lantern's ember broke the stillness. In her palm, the first ember throbbed softly beneath her glove. It was not just warm, it felt aware. The crow had said 11 remained. But no map pointed the way. Only the ember guided her now, its warmth tugging her westward, through fog and shadow, toward the ruins of a place called Iviran's Hollow. It was here, so the ember whispered, that the second flame awaited. Eleanor arrived just as twilight swallowed the horizon. The ruins loomed out of the fog like jagged memories, walls collapsed, towers hollowed, and a stone gate split in two by time. Once, this had been a great city. Now, only a single structure remained intact, a mirror-like obsidian tower standing silent at the center, untouched by rot or ruin. As she passed beneath its archway, the flame in her lantern dimmed. The first ember grew cold in her hand. Then she heard it. A voice. Her voice. "Why did you let him go?" She spun around, but saw only her reflection in the dark glass of the tower's walls. It was her, but different. Her hair was longer, her eyes weary and pale. "You think you're saving him," the reflection whispered. "But you're just repeating his sins." "I'm not like him," Eleanor replied. "No. He defied death. Lied to spirits. Split his soul. And now you seek to piece it back together. For what?" Eleanor's grip on the lantern tightened. "I'm doing it to end this." A pulse from the ember. The tower shuddered. Suddenly, the floor beneath her gave way. She fell into a memory not her own. She stood in a courtyard of living fire. Statues screamed silently. The air tasted of smoke and betrayal. At the far end of the courtyard stood Thorn, not the shade she'd met, but a younger man, handsome, roguish, with laughter like wine. Beside him was a woman with raven black hair and eyes like shattered stars. Eleanor gasped. That woman, she had her own smile. The woman's voice echoed across the memory. "You promised me peace, Thorn." "I promised you everything," Thorn replied. "Even eternity. But not truth." Then, a scream. The woman turned to fire. Her body vanished into a whirl of embers, and Thorn stumbled backward, shouting her name, Saren. Eleanor jolted back into the tower, heart racing. Who was she? she whispered. Was she my mother? The mirror beside her shimmered and a new reflection stepped through. Not her. Not Thorn. But Saren. Alive. Whole. You seek the second ember. Saren said. Then answer me this. She raised her hand, and fire danced across her palm. What truth do you fear the most? The room darkened. Around them rose flickering illusions, Eleonora failing to save her father. Eleonora betraying her own soul. Eleonora becoming the next lantern bearer, cursed like Thorn to wander forever. Saren stepped closer. Will you carry that weight, even if it consumes you? Eleonora didn't flinch. Yes. At her word, the lantern erupted in light. The illusions shattered. Saren vanished, leaving only a single ember in the air, white-hot and glowing with memory. The second ember. As Eleonora reached for it, her fingers brushed something else cold and sharp. A silver key. She pocketed it instinctively. The moment she did, the obsidian tower crumbled like ash in the wind. She was back in the ruins. The fog had lifted. 2 embers now pulsed at her side. One of guilt. One of truth. And far away, in the shadows of a broken cathedral, a cloaked figure watched. Its eyes burned blue. Its breath crackled like burning parchment. It turned to the darkness behind it and whispered. She has begun. And from the darkness, something ancient stirred. The road westward from the ruins of Iviran's hollow wound downward into a deep hollow where mist kissed the water and the trees wept black sap. Locals, what few remained in scattered hamlets nearby, called it the mire of mouthless songs, but most whispered another name with dread. The swamp of silent echoes. Eleonora's lantern flickered uneasily as she entered. The air was thick and humid, and with every step, the mud tried to claim her boots. Strange shapes slithered beneath the surface, sometimes too quick to see, sometimes not quick enough. And then silence. Not the quiet of solitude. The silence here was forced, oppressive, a spell woven into the very air. The moment Eleonora stepped past a leaning willow tree, her voice vanished. She tried to call out, nothing. Even the squelch of mud and the rustling of leaves disappeared. The world became mute. She gripped her lantern tight. Its flame dimmed again, and turned blue. The second ember pulsed once, warning her. Somewhere deeper inside this swamp, something was watching. Hours passed. Or maybe moments. Time moved strangely here. She came upon a drowned village, wooden huts sunken into black water, doorways rotting and half submerged. In the center of the square stood an altar of stone, its surface covered in carved names that shifted as she looked at them. A wind moved past her, not heard, but felt. And then, Eleonora. The voice froze her in place. She turned slowly. There, standing waist deep in the swamp, was her father. Alder. He looked tired, but his eyes were kind. His voice, his real voice, broke through the silence like a whisper inside her head. Come home, child. It's over. Let the embers go. Eleanora's eyes watered. Why did you leave me? She whispered, the sound caught in her throat. He held out a hand. I never left. You did. She took a step forward. But the lantern's flame flared red. And Alder grinned. Too wide. Too wrong. His eyes flickered into black voids. The reflection in the water beneath him shifted. He was not casting a reflection at all. It was then Eleanora realized, this wasn't her father. This was the mimic of the mire. A creature born from the echo of sorrow, ancient and merciless. It fed on memory and longing. It lured travelers with familiar voices, voices it stole from the dead, or from the dreams of the grieving. The mimic's form shifted, now her grandmother, now Saren, now even Thorn himself. You carry embers, it rasped, in Thorn's voice. Let me take the burden. Let me burn them for you. Eleanora raised her lantern, but the flame fought back violently, like it knew this thing must not be approached. She stepped back, but the mimic surged forward. She ran. Through twisted roots and narrow trails of plank wood barely holding above water. The mimic whispered behind her in 1,000 voices. Eleanora. Help me. Come back. Until she reached a grove of drowned trees. There, hung high among the branches, was a glowing shard of flame, the third ember caught in a cage of thorns. But the mimic was already here. It climbed the trees like shadow made flesh, and now it wore her own face. I am your echo, it whispered. Eleanora turned to face it. She remembered what the crow had said, each ember is guarded. But not always with claws. Sometimes, with grief. She took a breath. Then opened her mouth. And sang. No sound came out. But she remembered the lullaby her grandmother used to hum. She mouthed every word. And something stirred. Not in the air, not in the swamp. In the ember. It flared with golden light. The thorns around it cracked. The mimic shrieked in silence, flailing as light pierced its body. It dissolved not with fury, but with regret, leaving behind not ashes, but voices. Dozens of them. Lost voices. One of them whispered to her as it passed. Thank you. The third ember fell into her palm, warm and flickering with sorrow. For the first time, Eleanora wept not from fear, but from knowing she had truly helped someone. The swamp receded. Sound returned like a tide breaking. Birdsong. Wind. Her own heartbeat. She left the drowned village behind. And far above the clouds, in a temple with no doors, a figure in robes marked with 12 burning eyes opened its home. They awaken faster than we expected, it said. Another voice replied. Then we must send a collector. The wind had changed. As Eleonora left the swamp of silent echoes, the air grew dry, brittle. The once damp earth gave way to cracked soil, and soon, her boots met shifting sand. An endless horizon stretched before her, golden, vast, and unforgiving. The third ember pulsed faintly at her side, still whispering fragments of sorrowed voices, but its warmth began to shift, drawn toward the west, where a strange shimmer rose from the desert like a mirage. She walked for days. Or maybe only hours. Time was unreliable beneath the burning sky. Her lantern, now holding 3 embers, glowed steadily in the day and flared brighter under the cold starlight. It seemed to guide her feet even when she could no longer feel them. On the 4th sunrise, she found it. Half buried in the sand, rising like the spine of some long-dead beast, were marble spires and fallen archways, what remained of Zephyriel, the sun-locked city. Legends spoke of Zephyriel as a place of gold and betrayal, where kings once bound the wind and enslaved fire itself. But it had vanished in a single night, consumed by sandstorms born from forgotten sin. No map marked its location. No path led here. Yet Eleonora had arrived. She stepped between fallen pillars and shattered gates, her lantern throwing long shadows against sandstone walls etched with broken runes. Beneath her, the ground seemed to breathe. Then a whisper. "Do you remember me?" Eleonora froze. It was a girl's voice, young, familiar. Too familiar. She turned. There, standing beneath a cracked archway, was a child. Her hair was braided like Eleonora's had once been as a girl. Her eyes mirrored hers perfectly. "I'm the you that forgot," the child said softly. "And the city remembers." The ground split open. Eleonora fell. She landed not on sand but stone. Black marble polished like a mirror. All around her, torches burst into flame, casting light on towering columns, broken statues, and cracked mosaics. The city was alive beneath the dunes. And it was whispering. Faces moved in the walls. Eyes blinked from paintings. Voices drifted through the cracks. Lies have roots. And roots drink blood. Eleonora stood, shaken, and began to walk. She passed golden thrones overgrown with thorned vines. Banquet halls filled with skeletal remains frozen mid-feast. In one room, a mirror reflected not her but Thorn, younger, draped in silks, seated beside a man wearing a crown of bronze fire. "Why not rule?" the crown wearer said. "You could be king here." "I did not come to be king," Thorn answered. "Only to learn how not to die." And yet, the figure whispered, you left with something worse. The vision faded. Eleonora stepped through a cracked doorway into a great library, its scrolls crumbling into ash, its ink burned into the air. There, in the center of the chamber, hovered a single flame encased in glass. The fourth ember. It pulsed with power. But unlike the others, this one was cold. Guarding it stood a woman cloaked in silk the color of sun-bleached bone. Her face was hidden behind a mask carved from obsidian. I am the Warden of Remnants, she said. Do you come to claim betrayal? I come for the Ember, Eleonora replied. And to understand. The Warden tilted her head. Then let us test your memory. With a gesture, the room dissolved. Eleonora stood on a balcony of firelit towers. Below, a mob chanted her name. But they were not joyful. They were afraid. Beside her stood a man in chains, her father, bruised and broken. Choose, the Warden's voice echoed. The truth, or what keeps you safe? The mob screamed. Burn the witch. Let him pay. Eleonora couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. This is not real. She shouted. Is it not? Came the answer. Or is it a memory you buried? Suddenly, the scene shattered. She was back in the library. The Warden now stood closer, holding out the fourth ember. You may take it, she said. But it comes with knowledge. Thorn betrayed Zephyriel. He learned how to bind his soul, but he took the spell from the city. In doing so, he doomed it. And now you walk his path. Eleonora took the ember. It burned her palm. But she did not let go. The chamber quaked. Dust fell from the ceiling. The Warden faded into dust, and the great library began to collapse. Eleonora ran, ember in hand, sprinting through hallways now splitting apart, down stairwells crumbling into nothing, and finally bursting out into sunlight just as the last pillar fell. Zephyriel vanished behind her. The desert had reclaimed what was stolen. That night, beneath a sky filled with blue stars, Eleonora lit her lantern again. 4 embers now danced inside it. Guilt. Truth. Loss. Betrayal. Each one a weight. Each one a key. She unrolled the parchment her father had left her weeks ago. Beneath the writing, something new had appeared, glowing faintly in ember light. The next flame lies beneath the ice. She looked north, toward the mountains that crown the world. And the lantern flame turned cold. Far away, beneath the sea of dunes, in a place not of earth but of memory, a being stirred. Its mouth split open in silent laughter. And 13 black candles lit themselves in a circle. The wind was no longer merely cold. it howled. As Eleonora ascended into the white peaks of the north, she no longer felt her fingers, nor her face. Her cloak had frozen stiff, her hair glazed with ice. Each step forward into the blizzard took more effort than the last. But she didn't stop. The lantern at her side, now burning with 4 distinct embers, flickered like a heartbeat. The 4th ember, born from betrayal, glowed darkest of all. Yet it was the smallest flicker, the newest one, faint and sapphire-colored, that drew her upward. Toward the mountain. Toward the 5th ember. Legend called this place Solkar's Crown, a ridge of jagged cliffs said to pierce the sky. But few knew what lay just beyond its wind-carved archways. The fortress of frozen names. She found it after sundown on the 6th day, a towering structure of crystal and stone, half buried in snow. Icicles hung from its towers like swords, and its gates bore no markings except a single etched sigil, a snowflake inside a tear. No sound. No welcome. But as Eleonora approached, the doors opened on their own. Inside, it was silent and pale. The walls shimmered with frost. Statues lined the halls, dozens, hundreds, each one depicting a different person, men, women, children, all caught mid-motion, mid-expression. Laughing. Crying. Screaming. Each one had a name engraved at its base. But the names were slowly fading. Eleonora stepped carefully through the icy corridor. Her breath fogged before her like a cloud of ghosts. That was when she heard it. A voice, quiet, close, familiar. Eleonora. She turned. No one. Again, the voice, this time behind her. Then to her left. Then, from within the statues. They whispered her name. Begged her to listen. Each one told a story, of forgotten siblings, broken friends, lost love. One of them, a statue of a young woman with hair woven like icicles, looked particularly sharp in detail, more vivid than the rest. Her name, though nearly erased, still shimmered faintly in blue light. Elira. The name echoed in Eleonora's chest. She didn't know how. But she knew this woman. A memory not hers flickered through her mind. Thorn, younger, standing on a frozen balcony beside Elira, promising her the stars. But he had left. He always did. And Elira had stayed. Eleonora stepped closer. As she did, the air shimmered. The statue's eyes moved. And suddenly, the world cracked. The ice gave way. Eleonora fell not downward, but inward into a memory woven with frost. She found herself standing in a ballroom made of mirrors and silence. Ice chandeliers glistened above, and walls shimmered with snowflakes suspended in time. At the center stood Elira, alive, pale, regal, and cold. "You carry what he once stole," she said, not turning. "The embers," Eleonora replied. "I didn't steal them." "No, Elira whispered, "You inherited them." "That is worse." Eleanor's voice shook. "You were one of them, weren't you? One of the people Thorn left behind." Elira turned then. Her eyes weren't cruel, they were hollow. "I was the first," she said. "The first to love him. The first to be forgotten." She reached into her chest and pulled out a shard of glowing ice. "This is the 5th Ember. The one he left here, with me. A part of him I never asked for." "Then let me take it," Eleanor said. "I can carry the weight. I choose to." "You think carrying pieces of thorn will make you whole?" Elira's voice cracked like ice. "Each ember does not only burn, it erases. The more you gather, the less of yourself remains." "I don't believe that," Eleanor said, though her voice faltered. The ballroom cracked again. Frost bloomed up her boots, across her legs. "You're freezing," Elira whispered. "Not your skin. Your name." And Eleanor saw it, her name, floating in the air like snowflakes, slowly losing shape, becoming ash. "Take the ember," Elira said. "But leave behind a name." Eleanor closed her eyes, then opened them with fire. "I'll leave his," she said. From her satchel, she pulled the parchment with her father's writing, the one that had glowed after each ember. She placed it on the icy floor and whispered, "Thorn." The name burned, blue and bright. The ice recoiled. Elira smiled a sad, broken smile. "You are not him." Then she stepped forward and placed the 5th ember in Eleanor's palm. It was cold, colder than death. But it did not hurt. And for the first time in centuries, Elira's statue began to thaw. She closed her eyes and faded with grace. "Remember my name," she whispered. "So I won't vanish." Eleanor stood alone in the ballroom of frost, 5 embers burning in her lantern. And the statues. They were melting. Not dying, freeing. She stepped out into the snow. The fortress began to collapse behind her, turning to wind. Far below, in the mountain's shadow, something stirred in the storm. A shape of wings. A being made of mirrors and breath. It watched her with eyes made of snow. And it whispered to no one. She is now more than memory. She is the lantern. The sea was a living shadow. Thick fog rolled in like a ghostly tide, swallowing the horizon, blurring the line between water and sky. Eleanor's boat cut through the mist, its oars silent against the dark waves. The lantern hung from her belt, now glowing with 5 embers, each one a flickering memory of pain, loss, truth, guilt, and betrayal. Ahead, a faint light pierced the gray. A lighthouse. But this was no ordinary beacon. The lighthouse of shattered reflections stood on a jagged isle, battered by storms and time. Its walls were black glass, cracked like spiderwebs, reflecting not just the sea but the souls of those lost in its depths. As Eleonora approached the shore, the light shifted, fragmenting into 1,000 spectral rays. The lighthouse pulsed with a heartbeat that matched her own. She stepped inside. The interior was a labyrinth of mirrors and broken glass. Reflections flickered, showing not only Eleonora but others, some she recognized, some she feared. Among them was Kalen, a man with eyes like storm clouds and a voice that held both comfort and command. He was Thorn's brother, or perhaps the shadow of a brother lost to time. "Welcome," Kalen's reflection said, voice echoing from every surface. "You carry the embers, but do you carry their weight?" Eleonora's lantern flared brighter. "I carry what I must." Kalen nodded. "Then you must face the judgment hall." She followed the winding stairs to a chamber where light and darkness danced, where every choice, every regret, was held up for inspection. The sixth ember lay on an altar of fractured mirrors. But it was guarded not by beasts, but by the memories of those who had sought redemption and found only judgment. Voices whispered, "Forgive me. Judge me. Let me be free." Eleonora felt their pain and hesitation. She raised her lantern. The embers inside burned fiercely. She stepped forward, offering the light. The chamber shimmered. Shadows peeled away, revealing Kalen not just a reflection, but flesh and blood. "You are strong, Eleonora," he said softly. "But strength is not the absence of doubt." Together, they faced the judgment's visions of Thorn's past sins and moments of mercy, moments of cruelty. To claim the sixth ember, Eleonora had to choose to forgive or to condemn. Her heart broke and healed in the same breath. When she finally grasped the ember, the chamber sighed in release. Kalen smiled, fading into light. "You carry the flame of judgment now. Use it wisely." The lighthouse's light shone clear through the fog. Eleonora stepped back into her boat, the embers inside her lantern now 6. The sea whispered secrets. The wind carried a warning. And somewhere far away, the collector stirred once more. The night was thick, suffocating, wrapped in an unnatural silence. Eleonora found herself standing at the edge of a dense forest, where the trees twisted toward the sky like grasping fingers. The embers in her lantern, now 6 in number, glowed faintly, pulsing as if sensing the weight of the place. This was the Whispering Grove, a sacred and cursed woodland whispered about in old songs and feared by all who knew its name. No wind stirred, yet the leaves seemed to murmur secrets just beyond hearing. Eleonora stepped carefully beneath the canopy, shadows clinging to her like a second skin. The grove was alive not with animals, but with echoes of memories. Faces flickered in the bark of ancient trees. Voices drifted like mist, repeating fragments of forgotten moments. Suddenly, the air shifted. From the shadows emerged a figure, a woman draped in robes woven from silver threads, her eyes shimmering with countless stars. She called herself Lyra, the keeper of lost truths. "I see your lantern," Lyra said, voice both a melody and a warning. "You carry the ember of judgment. But can you face the truth hidden beneath your own light?" Eleonora nodded, gripping her lantern tighter. Lyra extended a hand, and the world dissolved into a swirl of colors and sensations. Eleonora found herself in a clearing where a pool reflected not her image, but scenes from her past. She saw her childhood moments of laughter with her father, Alder. But then, shadows crept in. Visions of her father leaving, secrets he never told, and a darkness growing between them. More hauntingly, she saw herself wandering the ember path, unknowingly walking the same mistakes as Thorn, caught in a cycle of fire and shadow. Tears welled in her eyes. "Truth," Lyra whispered, "is both a gift and a curse. To carry the ember is to carry both." Suddenly, the pool shattered, and from the shards rose the seventh ember, a flame flickering between light and shadow, embodying revelation and acceptance. Eleonora reached out, feeling a surge of clarity and pain as she grasped it. Lyra smiled softly. "With this flame, you awaken. But beware, the path grows darker before it leads to dawn." The grove seemed to exhale. Leaves rustled with voices of those who had once lost their way, now free to whisper guidance. Eleonora stepped out, her lantern burning with 7 embers, each a testament to the journey's trials and truths. Beyond the trees, a faint melody beckoned the call of the next ember, and the promise of secrets yet untold. Darkness was no longer an absence of light. It was a living thing. The sky above the abyssal hollow was a roiling sea of shadows, shifting and whispering. No stars shone through. The wind carried voices faint, desperate, and sometimes cruel. Eleonora stood at the edge of this forsaken valley, her lantern heavy with 7 embers, their glow faint against the oppressive blackness. The hollow yawned before her, a cavern so vast it seemed to swallow sound and hope alike. Each step she took echoed like a heartbeat in the void. The land here was broken, twisted roots stretched like claws, skeletal trees reached skyward as if begging for release. The ground beneath was soft and pulsing, like the earth itself was alive and breathing. Eleonora's breath came in short bursts. Her mind fought rising fear, memories threatening to overwhelm her. She had been warned. The hollow was a place where one's deepest fears took form, where courage was tested beyond limits, where the 8th ember awaited, but only to those who could face their own darkness. As she pressed forward, shadows coalesced into figures, faces from her past, distorted by time and grief. Alder's face appeared, his eyes hollow and accusing. "You left us," the phantom whispered. "No," Eleonora said, her voice steady despite the ache. "I'm here because I couldn't stay." The specter smiled sadly, then vanished. Ahead, a path of glowing stones emerged, each pulse in time with her heart. She followed them to a cavern entrance, marked by runes of protection and warning. Inside, a voice like silk and steel greeted her. "I am Caliph, guardian of the abyssal flame." From the darkness stepped a figure cloaked in shifting shadows, eyes glowing like molten gold. "You carry much pain," Caliph said. "But to claim the Ember, you must face the shadow within." Eleonora nodded. The cavern's walls shimmered and shifted, revealing reflections of herself, different versions, each trapped by fear. One screamed silently, bound by chains of doubt. Another wept, lost in memories of failures. Another smiled coldly, embracing darkness. Eleonora felt her own fears rise: failure, loss, betrayal. But she also remembered Lyra's words, "The path grows darker before it leads to dawn." She raised her lantern. Its embers flared, casting light that burned away the shadows. One by one, the reflections melted into ash. Then, at the cavern's heart, a flame hovered, black as void, edged with gold. The eighth ember. Caliph stepped aside. "Take it, if you are brave enough." Eleonora reached out. The flame seared her palm, but it was a searing of release, not pain. Visions flooded her mind: her father's silent regrets, her own moments of doubt, and a future where she might fall or rise. She embraced it. The cavern trembled. Light pierced the darkness, and for the first time, the hollow sang a song of hope and defiance. Outside, the stars reappeared, flickering faintly. Eleonora stood beneath the night sky, lantern glowing with 8 embers, each a victory, a lesson, a scar. She whispered a vow. "This ends with me." Far away, the collector watched from a throne of bone and flame. "She carries the burden well," it murmured. "But the final trials will break her or make her a legend." The air shimmered with heat and cold all at once. As if the very fabric of reality bent and folded around her. Eleonora stood before the veil of hours, a place whispered only in legends, where time was not linear but a swirling tempest of moments, memories, and possibilities. Her lantern burned with 8 embers, a constellation of flickering truths, losses, and burdens, yet here, even their glow seemed fragile. The veil before her rippled like a living thing, a curtain made of shimmering threads, each a strand of time itself. Taking a deep breath, Eleonora stepped through. She emerged in a hall lined with countless clocks, their hands spinning wildly or frozen still. The walls echoed with laughter and cries, whispers of lives both lived and lost. Before her stood a figure cloaked in shifting sands of time, neither holy man nor spirit, but both the keeper of moments. "Eleonora of the Ember Path," it intoned, voice like the ticking of countless clocks. "To claim the 9th ember, you must walk the corridors of your own soul. Face what was, what is, and what may yet be." The lantern's embers flickered uncertainly, sensing the gravity. The keeper gestured, and the hall dissolved. Eleonora found herself reliving her earliest memories, laughter with her father Alder beneath the sunlit trees of Morvain Hollow, the stories her grandmother whispered by firelight. But shadows twisted the scenes. Moments of fear, absence, secrets hidden behind smiles. She saw herself running through a storm of snow and flame, always searching, always chased. Then the vision shifted, an alternate future where she failed, where the embers dimmed and the path was lost. Tears streamed down her cheeks, the weight of possibility pressing on her heart. Time is both a gift and a curse, the keeper whispered. To hold it is to carry all joys and all sorrows. Yet you must choose which moments to carry forward, and which to let go. Eleonora looked at her lantern. The embers pulsed with a life of their own, each representing a fragment of the past and a seed of the future. She reached deep inside herself, pulling from memory the brightest moments, the warmth of her father's hand, the fierce love in her grandmother's eyes, the spark of hope burning in her own heart. With a cry, she grasped the glowing ember that emerged from the shifting threads, the ninth ember, radiant and pure. The hall vanished. Eleonora was alone, standing beneath a sky where stars traced infinite patterns of light and shadow. The lantern now held 9 flames, each a step closer to truth. But she knew the trials were far from over. Her father's letter had warned of a final reckoning, one that would challenge not only her strength but the very soul of the ember. Far away, beyond realms of time and memory, the collector stirred in its throne of bones. 9, it murmured. The ember gathers, but the light draws the darkness. A shadow flickered at its side. The lantern bearer walks the path we forged, the shadow said. And soon, the final flames will burn. The air was thick with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses against your chest and steals your breath. Eleonora stood at the threshold of the crimson abyss, a chasm said to be the origin of the ember's curse. It was here, deep beneath the world, that the truth awaited, a place where time and memory bled into one another, and where only the bravest dared to tread. Her lantern now burned with 11 embers, their combined light a fiery halo that pushed back the darkness, but the abyss yawned wide and cold. A voice echoed, soft, familiar, yet fractured. Eleonora, child of flame, you have come far. She stepped forward. The abyss swallowed her whole. She fell through waves of light and shadow, memories and dreams intertwining like a river of fire and ice. She saw her father, Alder, not as a man, but as a spirit trapped between worlds, his face twisted in agony and regret. She saw Thorn, not the trickster legend, but a man burdened by choices, desperate to undo what he had wrought. And then, the vision shifted. A chamber of blood-red stone. At its center, a heart of living flame beat slowly, casting dancing shadows. Eleonora realized the ember's true source. The heart of Ember. Before the heart stood a figure, neither fully man nor shadow, his eyes twin coals glowing with sorrow and fury. Thorn, she whispered. He spoke, voice a blend of pain and hope. You carry my blood, my burden. But you also carry my redemption. He reached out, and the embers in her lantern flared. But the curse is not just mine, it is ours. Eleonora felt the weight of generations pressing down, the fires within her threatening to consume and yet sustain. She asked, How do I end this? How do I free us all? Thorn's gaze softened. By embracing the ember's truth. By uniting the fragments. By facing the darkness inside. Suddenly, the chamber shook. Shadows poured from the heart-twisted forms born of fear, regret, and pain. They surged toward her. Eleonora lifted her lantern, its light exploding into a radiant blaze. The embers inside sang a chorus of fire and hope. She stepped forward, confronting the shadows. One by one, they dissolved, replaced by memories of love, sacrifice, and forgiveness. Each shadow was a piece of her own heart she had hidden away. When the last shadow faded, the chamber was still. Thorn smiled faintly. The path is nearly complete. One ember remains, the final flame of destiny. Eleonora's lantern pulsed with 12 brilliant lights. She understood now, to free her family, to end the curse, she must return to where it all began, Morvain Hollow. As she rose from the abyss, the world around her shimmered. Her father's voice echoed softly. "Daughter, you are the light in the darkness. The ember's bearer. The hope we all need." Eleonora's heart burned with new strength. She would finish the journey. Far away, the collector's throne flickered. The ember is whole. But the true test is yet to come. A dark smile crept across its shadowed face. The sky above Morvain Hollow was dark, but not empty. Stars blazed like embers, constellations shifting as if the very heavens themselves watched the unfolding of an ancient story. Eleonora stood at the center of the village square, her lantern glowing with 12 brilliant flames, the full assembly of the ember's fragments. The air crackled with power, heavy with expectation. Around her, shadows gathered, echoes of the past, spirits long lost, and the restless souls bound by the ember's curse. Among them stood the collector, a towering figure cloaked in bone and flame, eyes glowing with malevolence and ancient hunger. "I have waited long for this moment," the collector's voice thundered, shaking the very ground. "You carry the ember's fire, but do you carry the strength to face the final judgment?" Eleonora's heart beat steady. "I carry the flame of my blood, my hope, and my people. I will end this curse tonight." The collector laughed, a sound that split the night. "Then come, lantern bearer. Face the truth you have long avoided." With a gesture, the village vanished, replaced by a vast chamber of swirling fire and shadow. At its center, a colossal heart of ember pulsed, beating with raw, untamed energy. Thorn's shade emerged, his eyes heavy with centuries of regret. "You have done well, Eleonora. But this is where our paths truly converge." Eleonora stepped forward, feeling the weight of generations in her veins. "I am ready." The chamber erupted. Flames twisted into specters of light and darkness, memories of betrayal, sacrifice, love, and pain. Thorn and the collector clashed, fire against shadow, light against despair. Eleanor raised her lantern high. The 12 flames inside roared, sending waves of heat and light that pushed back the darkness. She felt the ember's power flow through her, binding past and present, father and daughter, curse and redemption. With a voice steady and fierce, she spoke. I forgive you, Thorn. I forgive the darkness. But I choose the light. The collector screamed, a sound of shattering chains and broken curses. Its form twisted, fracturing into a million sparks that scattered like dying stars. Thorn's shade smiled, peace finally softening his features. The ember's cycle ends. Thanks to you. Eleanor's lantern exploded in a burst of pure flame bright enough to banish the night. When the light faded, Morvain Hollow was whole again. The village was alive with warmth, laughter, and song. Her father's spirit appeared beside her, no longer bound, no longer lost. Thank you, my daughter, Alder whispered. You carried the flame when I could not. Eleanor smiled, tears shining like stars. The ember burns in all of us now. A light for tomorrow. As dawn broke, the 12 flames merged into one steady, eternal. The curse was lifted. The path was complete. And Eleanor's story would be told for generations of a girl who carried the light through darkness, and whose flame would never die. Title: The Lantern's Whisper, The Ember's Legacy. Description: In the quiet village of Morvain Hollow, a young woman named Eleanor embarks on a perilous journey to unravel the mystery of her father's disappearance and the ancient curse that binds her family. Guided by a lantern burning with 12 mystical embers, each containing fragments of a tormented soul, Eleanor traverses haunted forests, forgotten ruins, frozen fortresses, and shadowed abysses. Along the way, she confronts spectral guardians, deceptive echoes of the past, and the relentless collector, a dark force intent on preserving the ember's curse. As Eleanor pieces together the shattered legacy of Thorn, a trickster bound by fire and shadow, she must face her own fears, betrayals, and the burden of destiny. The Lantern's Whisper is a haunting tale of redemption, courage, and the enduring power of light amid darkness, where every ember carries a story, and every flame holds the hope of salvation.